Top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. There appears to be some back and forth action between Errol Spence Jr. and his old buddy Mikey Garcia. I don't know who fired the first shot. I don't know who threw the first punch. I get the sense that perhaps it was Errol by posting this via his Instagram stories, picking my youngest up from school. LOL.
The height differential's not that far off.
Between what's supposed to be a prepubescent Mikey Garcia and his old man, Errol Spence Jr. I guess Errol decided to rib Mikey Garcia for some reason, though beating a blown-up lightweight that jumped up 2 weight classes to fight you at welterweight is hardly anything to brag about, and Mikey seems to have responded by saying, no excuses, but just an FYI, a win over a sick lightweight shouldn't be your biggest victory. It is true that Mikey Garcia was Errol Spence Jr.'s biggest fight. That pay-per-view outperformed every other pay-per-view that came after it. It was Errol Spence Jr.'s pay-per-view debut, Mikey Garcia's as well, and since then, Errol's numbers have declined. None of the subsequent pay-per-views that followed, the one with Sean Portier, the one with Danny Garcia, the other Garcia, none of those pay-per-views did better numbers than the one that Errol did with Mikey. Though I wouldn't say that Mikey Garcia is his biggest win.
It's his biggest fight.
Marquee-wise it was, but in terms of merit, legitimacy of a victory, I think that would be between Sean Portier, the then reigning WBC champion, and Kell Brook, the then reigning IBF champion. And neither of those victories are all that sizable either. I mean, Kell Brook, he was coming off a loss to Gennady Golovkin the fight before in the middleweight division. That, eye surgery, and a steep weight cut. You think about Sean Portier, good solid fight, very entertaining. I bought the pay-per-view, but let's not forget, the first man to give Sean Portier a loss was Kell Brook.
So does that make the Brook victory bigger?
Bigger than the win over Sean Porter in their unification match? It's neither here nor there. Mikey Garcia is now claiming that he was under the weather at the time that he fought Errol Spence, and he posted medical documentation that indicates he was running a temperature of 101.
He's also claiming he's white.
What?
Not sure how the homies are gonna feel about that.
You're telling me all this time that Mikey Garcia and Robert Garcia, the Garcias, they're Caucasians?
Apparently.
In any event, Mikey Garcia claims to have been running a temperature, running a fever, the day he fought Errol Spence Jr., and he's got medical documentation to back it up, and this is a response, looks like a response, to Errol Spence Jr.'s meme. In truth, we've already been there and done that with what's left of Errol Spence Jr. and what's left of his career. We've talked about that on many occasions. For Mikey, who's coming off that loss to Sandor Martin, I said it before and I'll say it again, I don't think the people over there at DAZN, Eddie Hearn, Joe Markowski, I don't think they're in any hurry to give Mikey another $1 million to go in there and stink out the place the way he did with Sandor Martin.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Mikey Garcia, shrewd businessman Mikey Garcia, still is a network and promotional free agent. Thus, he's not pinned down, not limited to doing business with Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, and DAZN. He can go back to the PBC side of things and see what Uncle Al is talking about. One fight that's a genuine possibility, one fight that almost immediately comes to mind, is a potential Gervonta Davis pay-per-view at 140 pounds. Should Gervonta make it past Isaac Cruz later on this year? If he makes it past that guy, in all likelihood, he's going to move right back up to 140. He's been hopscotching between weight classes like this for years, and he's not all that concerned with procuring world titles.
He's not going to fight Teofimo with Devin.
Try and understand that Devin Haney does not have a contractual obligation to fight on DAZN. So if the Mayweather Promotions people were interested in making a fight between Gervonta and Devin, they had that opportunity, and they passed on it. Hell, they didn't even try.
No, they landed on Rolly Romero.
Which then became Isaac Cruz after Rolly got all entangled in that sex scandal, which he's still in the thick of. I mean, how does Isaac Cruz compare with the Devin Haney fight in terms of interest and marquee value?
We know which fight would have been the bigger fight.
And we know which one of those fights would have been for an actual world title. The Devin Haney fight. That is an avenue that was not explored, but Mikey Garcia is one that might be explored in 2022. Should young Gervonta make it past Isaac Cruz at the end of this year, I could see Mikey going back to Al, setting up some kind of tune-up fight with a Giovanni Santiago or somebody like that, and then moving straight into a Gervonta Davis pay-per-view.
Because I don't think Matchroom's going to give this guy another $1 million payday.
Mikey Garcia has costed Matchroom and DAZN close to $10 million in guaranteed purses for what are not big fights. $7 million with Jesse Vargas, and another million, 1.2, 1.5, something like that, earlier this year with Sandor Martin. Thus, I think that Matchroom is all but done frittering away money on the career, what remains of it, of Mikey Garcia. And I don't see Mikey going back to Top Rank and doing any business with them, and that just leaves...
That only leaves him with Uncle Al to do business with.
Mikey said he's not calling it a career, he's going to move on, he's not retiring, and that's all well and good, but I don't think that Matchroom is in any hurry to waste any more of their money on Mikey Garcia. Now, maybe Al might, if Mikey promises to fight one of his boys, walks into a
2 or 3 fight deal
that caps off with a Gervonta Davis fight, because the PBC ain't got that many prize stallions between 135 and 140. But with Mikey Garcia in their corner, they can set something up. A pay-per-view that might do better numbers than Gervonta Davis's pay-per-views have been doing so far. Because none of those numbers, the Santa Cruz numbers, the Barrios numbers, none of them are nothing to write home about.
They've got to get Mikey back in the winner's bracket first.
They'd have to if they want to do this thing, to give off the illusion that Mikey Garcia's still got it, and that a fight between him and Gervonta is a titillating fight, because the last time out, the last time we saw Mikey, he looked like a...
Looked fucking terrible.
So we'll see what happens next year, and we'll see if my hypothetical scenario comes into fruition, because one thing is certain, the PBC ain't got that many prize stallions at 135 or 140 pounds, and I don't think anybody is in a hurry to give Mikey Garcia more money. The only option he's got left is going back to the PBC. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Ryan Garcia on criticism from Canelo Alvarez, Ryan was quoted as saying, "I understand where he's coming from. It's always all love. I don't take anything personal. I just know that I had a hard year, but I'm fully recovered mentally. When I get back, I'm coming for everybody's heads. Destroy them. I hope that includes Devin Haney." Listen, I don't want to sound like a broken record. I don't want to sound repetitive. But when you see a young, up-and-coming, unbeaten fighter that's just now crossing over into contender status, and his fights are riddled with as many problems as Ryan's fights have been riddled with problems, well, it's not encouraging. It's not promising for the future, especially coming from a guy who said he wants to retire at, 26, 27 years old? You better hit the ground running next year.
To make up for lost time.
Ryan Garcia is 23 years old, and he fought only once last year against Francisco Fonseca, only once this year against Luke Campbell. This is a very sparse schedule of activity for a fighter that's still developing, still learning. When he fought Luke, that was in January of this year. And that's basically saying that upon Ryan Garcia's return, in all likelihood, he will have been inactive for 12 months. That is not encouraging towards a fighter's career, his development, and rounding out as a fighter, picking up the necessary skills and experiences to compete at the highest levels of this very dangerous sport.
Ryan was criticized by a lot of people.
A lot of people didn't believe Ryan Garcia's mental health stuff. They didn't even believe he was injured more recently when he pulled out of the Joseph Diaz fight. A lot of people, they're not buying Ryan's stories, but I'll go as far as saying that even if all of that is true, even if he did in fact have some kind of a mental health issue that made it difficult for him to fight, difficult for him to train, difficult to perform, even if he did suffer an injury ahead of the Jojo Diaz fight, even if all of that is true, it all means the same thing to me.
It doesn't look good.
A lot of people that were rushing to Ryan Garcia's defense, those are people that can't see the forest for the trees. This is a very dangerous sport, lots of tension, takes lots of mental fortitude to participate in it. And if you're having anxiety attacks and you're an injury-prone fighter, or you're just a problematic guy altogether, it doesn't make for longevity in this sport. It doesn't make for longevity in a fighter's career. So even if everything Ryan said were true and you're taking it at face value,
It doesn't look good.
it still doesn't look good, whether you lambast him for it or not, whether he's lying or not. If he's lying, then that shows a lack of discipline. If he's not lying and all of this stuff checks out and it's all true,
It doesn't look good.
it still doesn't look Good. There is no bright side. There is no silver lining to a fighter as young as Ryan, who's still developing, being on this sparse schedule of activity, all this inactivity.
It doesn't look good.
Regardless of why it's happening, and that's what's important. That's why all the sympathizers, those are people that can't see the forest for the trees.
You want to play him a violin? Play him a violin.
If you're in the business of throwing professional boxers pity parties, by all means, knock yourself out. But what I see is a guy who, if he continues this way, he's never going to round out as a fighter.
Not on the level of his mentor, Canelo.
I'm just giving it to you straight. It's the only way I know how to give it to you.
I mean, maybe he needed that tough love.
Maybe it'll make a difference. And finally, in heavyweight news, Frank Warren says Tyson Fury's in no rush to confirm next fight. He will await the WBC's ruling. Regardless of what happens at the convention, the WBC's convention, which is supposed to go down in a few weeks, Warren cautions that Fury will make the final decision. I don't think anything will happen until the WBC has their convention, which is later this month. And I don't think that that's going to happen until then, Warren told Talk Sport. There's no rush. And there's no rush from Tyson's perspective. As I've said to everybody, it doesn't matter what anybody says. He will do what he wants to do. If the deal is right, he'll do it. If he doesn't want to do it, he won't do it. He's his own man. Dillian Whyte, even with the WBC's order, is not fully confident the fight will come off. I am not that convinced this will happen. You don't really know what is going to happen with Fury, Whyte said. He says he is a fighting man, and I believe he is a fighting man, so I hope that he takes the fight and it is mandated by the WBC. The fight makes sense, and I think this time he will fight, but I don't know why these guys are even in the running. It should just be me and him, these guys being other options for Tyson Fury outside of a mandated Dillian Whyte fight. We heard some rumblings about Joe Joyce being in the running. Whyte continued, I have earned the fight and continuously worked hard, fighting more top 10 contenders than most other champions. But you can never bank on anything with him, because he might just decide he's had enough. I don't care who promotes the fight. I just want the fight, and the belt is good, but I'm here to fight. I have the opportunity to fight the greatest of all time, as everyone is saying at the moment.
Bit of sarcasm from the Brixton brawler.
Brixton bruiser, Dillian Whyte, who I don't actually think views Tyson Fury as the greatest of all times. I don't actually think Dillian Whyte views Tyson Fury's run so far through that lens.
I don't think a lot of people will view him through that lens if he retires.
I think that Tyson Fury is an excellent boxer, though I can't say he has an excellent resume, has had an excellent run. He beat Vladimir Klitschko, absconded, got fat, retired for a little while, came back at an opportune time to fight Deontay Wilder, and he fought that guy and he beat that guy.
Yeah.
Did it 3 times by my count.
But only 2 officially.
2 on paper. I'd view Tyson Fury, should he retire, as a guy who made out like a bandit.
More than the greatest of all times.
Former middleweight champion turned trainer and commentator, Tyson Fury's cousin, Andy Lee, said,
In reference to Fury's future plans,
I said, do you retire? He said, I'm thinking that way. And then he said, on the other hand, what else am I going to do with my life? He likes the Dillian Whyte fight. That's what he's talking about to me. So I can see that being next. And that more or less confirms that Tyson Fury is contemplating retirement.
Big John Fury wants him to retire.
His old man, John Fury, who says he'll have a good, hard-earned rest now, and what he wants to do is up to him. I said, retire. He's won everything. He's got no more to prove. He's got millions in the bank, secure for life. He's his own man. He'll do what he wants to do.
Well, that's what everybody keeps saying.
He made a lot of money off those 3 Wilder fights he did. Just those 3 fights. He made enough that he can retire with more money in the bank than the average citizen in the United Kingdom or the United States. So he's got plenty of dough.
Maybe enough that he doesn't feel the need to fight anymore.
Though I recall it being Tyson Fury that said, the structured environment that boxing offers a fighter gave him the mental stability to battle through his mental health issues, his demons. I remember Tyson Fury saying that.
So if he's not boxing, does he go off the rails again?
John Fury has stated that Tyson Fury was very badly injured prior to the Deontay Wilder trilogy fight. He said Fury had to have injections in both elbows to numb them before the bout, has since undergone a 6-hour operation to remove bone spurs. I'll tell you something. If Tyson Fury don't want to make the decision himself, if he leaves it in the hands of the WBC, but he's still feeling ambivalent about fighting Dillian Whyte, one option he can resort to is franchise status. Because franchise status would allow him to circumvent the Dillian Whyte fight, but still allow him the right to challenge the winner of what could be Whyte versus Wilder, or if Dillian Whyte takes care of Wilder and goes straight into an undisputed title fight, it would allow Tyson Fury to return at a time of his choosing,
Take on the winner for the remaining alphabet titles.
while he's on his own time and has his pick of the litter. Chooses who he wants to fight, because franchise champions don't have mandatories.
I think that's how Tyson Fury would like it.
We know that Bob Arum's not crazy about mandatories. I mean, I think that's something they might already be petitioning for. And when that WBC convention rolls around and things come to a head, news might break that Tyson Fury is the latest WBC champion that has crossed over into franchise status, thereby circumventing the Dillian Whyte fight and making Dillian Whyte the WBC's heavyweight world champion.
Been saying it for a year that might happen.
The Dillian Whyte fight could be a very lucrative fight in the United Kingdom. Tyson Fury could make that much more money fighting that guy, though. Dillian Whyte is not Deontay Wilder. He is a more prolific puncher. No defensive wizard, but very dangerous within close quarters, mid-range to inside. And it's going to be a physical fight if he decides to have that fight. So
Does Tyson Fury want to do it?
it's good that Dillian Whyte is saying he doesn't care who promotes the fight. Matty Hearn, Frank Warren, Bob Arum, just do the damn fight.
Get it done.
If Tyson Fury were to retire off his latest victory over the same guy that he beat last year, I hate to break the news to you guys out there, but that don't make him the GOAT. I'm not even sure that makes him this era's best heavyweight, because Deontay Wilder didn't face most of what was out there. And you fighting that guy 3 times ain't gonna change that. You haven't faced most of what's out there. You haven't faced Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, Dillian Whyte. You fought Klitschko and retired for 2 years. You come back, you become all entangled with Deontay Wilder for 3 fights, and between those 3 fights, you fight a couple of guys.
But those wasn't the top guys.
If Deontay Wilder had already fought Anthony Joshua, or Dillian Whyte, or Alexander Usyk, or Andy Ruiz,
If he would have fought all those guys and beat them,
and then Tyson Fury comes along and beats him, then maybe there's an argument that Tyson Fury can retire. But as it stands, your victories over Wilder don't prove that you beat Dillian Whyte, because Wilder never fought Dillian Whyte. Wilder never fought Anthony Joshua. Wilder never fought...
he never fought Usyk.
That's all unfinished business.